Welcome to Catholic Champion. I'm your host, John Yep, and my co-host, Michael Hichborn. On the show today, we are talking about the Holy Father and praying for him as well, and his recent comments on migration, as well as Charlie Kirk assassination updates, and along with a bomb threat outside a Catholic church just a couple days ago in D.C. Stay tuned.
And I felt for a long time that, if a country doesn't have religion, doesn't have faith, doesn't have God, it's going to be very hard to be a good country. There's no reason to be good. I want to be good because you want to prove to God that you're good, so you go to that next step, right? So that's very important to me. I think it's really very important.
Good way to start. That is the President of the United States. Let's let that sink in. That's the man we worked so hard to elect, imperfect though he is. It was definitely the way better the option. He's doing a wonderful job. We got to really pray for President Trump. It never gets old for me to hear someone with such power in the Oval Office talking with such conviction about God. I know Trump is in his own path towards the Lord, quasi-Christian or whatever, but he's got that sense, and I think it's so important we pray for him because he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. I cannot imagine. Even from my vantage point, you as well, Michael, leading an institution, Lepanto Catholics for Catholics, just the pressure you sometimes have from different people, donors, friends, whatever. Multiply that by like a zillion with what President Trump has on his plate from different factions, people wanting this, that, and the other thing. He's also solving the world's problems in the Middle East. He really took a leading role in forcing Benjamin Netanyahu really the table and Hamas as well to just agree to a ceasefire. We pray that it actually goes through. So it's important we pray for this man. He's got incredible stamina, just energy wise. He sleeps like 4 hours a day, and he's just up and at him, trying to do his best to help this country, help the average person. So pray for President Trump. Did you see the clip too, Michael, where he had Mark Carney? I guess you call him Prime Minister of Canada in his Oval Office yesterday.
No, I didn't see that one.
He literally is talking about transgenderism, and I think Prime Minister literally has a son that's transitioned, so he had to sit there uncomfortable while Trump talked about that. There are only two genders, but anyway, Trump needs our prayers. So immigration, okay, we have last week we covered about how the Holy Father was under the microscope last week because of what he said regarding Senator Dick Durbin, and I think he heard your advice because you're the one that first said it, right? You said Holy Father probably don't do interviews on American politics. So do we have that clip? Just play it really fast. This is I think the reporter tried to trip him up again, and this is what
Holy
happened.
Father, yes. President Trump has sent 400 National Guard troops to your city, Chicago.
Yes. I prefer not to comment at this time about choices made, political choices within the United States. Thank you very much.
Is that good, Michael?
I think that's a great thing. Just cut the interview off right there. Don't get into the fray. And quite honestly, he should just be speaking in terms of what the church teaches and get out of politics altogether.
Again, I'm not completely there yet. I mean, there's room. I think a Holy Father should be able to handle an interview when he's well prepared. So I really respect him. I'm grateful he didn't respond. That was he didn't need to get involved with that issue. But there are times when the Pope does need to get political, right, or enter into a little bit. You think about how Pope Pius XII, right, really took a strong stand after the World War II, the 1948 elections in Italy, right? And he made a strong push to say this communist candidate should not be elected, right? So there is a case.
But what we're talking about there isn't politics. You're talking about faith. You're talking about morals. So when you're talking about the church's teachings on certain things, by the time 1948 rolls around, Pope Pius XII had already condemned communism. And anybody who joins the Communist Party was automatically excommunicated and right. No longer allowed to receive any of the sacraments. So this is
I mean, obviously the intention always has to be from an aspect of faith. That's what I mean, of course. But from the outside view, it seems like he's entering in with his faith into the political realm. Okay, it's all about where you start from. Are you doing it because of purely of a faith motive, and you happen to cross over into what can be seen as a political boundary? Because that's obviously him wading into the 1948 elections in Italy. That's clearly making a step, right?
It's making a step, but it's again, it's a moral and a theological perspective, and not one that's predicated on any kind of policy or prudential matter with regard to how to govern. This is a big difference when we talk about things that are political. We're talking about just politics. What you're talking about are policy decisions and prudential judgments with regard to governance, as opposed to moral and theological matters that are of a higher realm. And those are things that the Pope can comment on and step in and discuss. But if he's talking about policy decisions and prudential matters, stay out of it.
So here's some background. So what, the reporter was probably trying to get the Holy Father to comment on. Okay, we have this big situation right now in the United States where we have liberal cities that are really just run by, or they're allowing anarchists to really rule over parts of the cities. Portland, Oregon really comes to mind, right? So President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to bring law and order to the country. That is the will of the people. He had the majority vote. He won the swing states, won the popular vote, and he was very clear all along, really since coming down the escalator in 2015, that he was going to do this. He was going to bring law and order back into the cities. These cities are just a total mess. I mean, you look at Philadelphia, it also comes to mind. People say when they go there, I've been there recently, just the amount of just drugs and just addicts, which are just all over the streets. I mean, you can't even walk there, right? And it's so Trump has made that a point in his administration to bring law and order. Okay, you have governors who are resisting, you have mayors who are resisting. So what does Trump do? Let's look at Illinois, Chicago, my home city. This is from Fox News. Texas National Guard deploys 200 troops to Illinois for federal protection mission and amid protest. You have Texas. They arrived in Illinois on Tuesday to protect federal personnel and property amid anti-immigration protest. The Pentagon confirmed. An official said the 200 guardsmen were mobilized for an initial 60-day period. Troops arrived in Illinois in support of the federal protection mission to protect federal functions, personnel, and property. About a dozen people have been arrested near an immigration and customs enforcement facility in Broadview, where anti-immigration crowds have been gathering for days. And by the way, this is also important, which specifically Chicago, because remember, it was the Holy Father made that comment and said that if you are against abortion but are for the inhumane treatment of migrants, and he was referring to what he probably heard was inhumane treatment of migrants going on in Chicago. I kind of prudentially disagree that there was that much here in Chicago, but that is what the Holy Father was referring to, this right here. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced on Saturday that additional special operations personnel will be deployed to Illinois after federal agents were rammed, boxed in by 10 cars. Okay, this is like, imagine that. Imagine a police car that's just doing a patrol in a neighborhood, and you have 10 cars that box them in, okay? So, and you also, Kristi Noem, I think she tried to use the bathroom facilities the other day, like 2 days ago, in Chicago at a federal building, and she was refused entrance, okay? So they are basically really holding the line and saying, no to what Trump is trying to doing, what we elected him to do. Governor Abbott has a comment on X noting that service members are on the ground and ready to go. They're putting America first by ensuring the federal government can safely enforce federal law. All right, comments on that, Michael. What do you think about this whole situation? Because you got National Guard there in Chicago, you have them in Portland, and a lot's going on there.
Well, I think that it's important to use the National Guard to go into situations where you have local governance that's refusing to actually defend the citizens of the state that they are in position to govern. When local law enforcement is not even going to protect ICE agents that are being surrounded by rioters and assailants, being told specifically to stand down, not to engage when these ICE agents are surrounded, you have a very serious problem, because now we're not talking about any kind of real human interaction. It's not just a matter of, hey, recognize that these ICE agents are men and women. They have families. They are human beings who deserve protection from of law, especially in an unlawful situation where you have assailants that are unjustly attacking them. When you're going to go ahead and treat them as if they're not human and just an extension of some amorphous federal agency, and then also come out and start crying foul about any kind of enforcement of immigration laws, you've now created a situation that is completely chaotic, ungovernable, and quite honestly is disqualifying for the individuals who are in charge. So I think that it's important for Trump to be sending in these National Guard troops and also these ICE agents to take control of a situation that has gotten way out of hand because the local governors refuse to get involved and to actually govern.
They want the chaos. Isn't that very familiar? It's
Ordo ab chaos. Order out of chaos. That's what they want. It's a Masonic line.
And it's happening. We literally just had what a week after Charlie Kirk's death, that ICE agent was shot there, ambushed in Texas. So their lives are on the line. These are, good people, and they're trying to bring, safety back to the streets, the suburbs, right? Again, Chicago. Like, I was there about a month ago, just walking in downtown. It's like there is a difference once Trump has arrived to a city to clean it up. I was in DC too, as well. A complete difference. You can actually walk around, go to restaurants. You're not looking over your back the whole time. So we want this, right? It's what makes our country great. Okay. So anyway, that's what's going on. So you have the context. You have, he continues with the deportations, which have to be done, yes, in a humane way, right? I was actually happy that Archbishop Winsky of Miami, who sometimes we disagree with a little bit, but at least he really made a point to get chaplains back to that. What's the camp called in Florida?
What is that? Alligator Alcatraz?
Alligator Alcatraz. And so they're bringing them there. I mean, I'm sure it's not the most wonderful of conditions, but I am grateful that they're at least trying to get those people out, because they don't have a right to be here. But as well, that Archbishop Winsky also fought to have the sacraments brought there to Alligator Alcatraz in the middle of the Everglades. So, okay, that's going on. Michael, the Pope meets with someone this week on Thursday with the Director General of the International Organization for Migration. Amy Pope had a meeting with Pope Leo the 14th, okay, in a private audience in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. So we read this. I didn't know who Amy Pope was. Okay, there she is. Miss Pope spoke to Vatican News about her meeting with the Holy Father and agency's mission to support the rights of people on the move. Okay, and this is from the Vatican News. Okay, the interview from her. The question: you had an audience with Pope Leo of the Vatican today. How was your encounter with him? What global migration issues did you present to the Holy Father? From Miss Pope. What a great name, by the way. If you're going to have an audience with the Pope, to be named Pope. Amy Pope says, we started first with discussing the impact of the humanitarian funding cuts on the work that we and other organizations are doing around the world. Okay, so there's been cuts on this, okay? Michael's got the bio on this woman, and you're going to do an expert job. I'm just kind of laying the framework for Michael to, boom, give everyone the insights of who this person actually is behind the scenes. Well, we're looking at yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, so this is from her. We are seeing at this moment in time when the need is quite high and in fact growing as a result of conflict, as a result of the impacts of climate disaster, as a result of increased poverty. More people are on the move than ever before. So it's climate. Climate disaster is causing this mass migration. She didn't say Biden's open borders in the past 4 years. She continues. But at the same time, unfortunately, many of our key donor governments have been cutting support for humanitarian response. I wonder who that was. Could that be the United States of America? Cutting off USAID. Michael will tell us in a second. For our organization, we've seen an impact about 9 million people who've either lost support or have had reduced support. And so the impacts from a human point of view are catastrophic in some cases. So we spoke about the need. So Amy spoke to the Pope about the need for the church to work together with organizations like ours, which serve people on the most basic needs, blah, blah, blah. And then lastly, let's see. You're taking part in the Refugees and Migrants in Our Common Home Conference. That sounds like a great conference to go to, which discusses how to educate people about migration topics. What are your hopes for this conference? What kind of issues are you presenting? Number one is to remind everyone of the humanity of the mission. Okay, this goes on, blah, blah, blah. And see anything else that's important here. Okay, this one about the UN. In his brief papacy so far, Pope Leo has already expressed firm views on migration, saying they are messengers of hope and that they remind the Catholic Church of her pilgrim dimension. How does Pope Leo's voice sustain your work at the United Nations, especially at the International Organization for Migration? She says it does so in a couple ways. Clearly, he provides a level of moral authority.
What is that?
Okay, I'll stop there, Michael. Go ahead.
Did you see that? Did you see that? No, did you see what she had? That, look at that. What is this? It's just like, I hope that was created by her 3-year-old son, because that's about the dumbest looking crucifix I've ever seen. I think it was actually made from wood from one of the migrant boats. You know what? At least get an artisan who knows what he's doing instead of just. I'm so sick and tired of bad art, bad philosophy, bad theology, and bad policy when it comes to these jerks who are. I'm sorry. This makes me angry. This makes me really mad.
Michael, you wouldn't be a good kindergarten teacher, man, because if you had your kids coming in and presenting that art, they might kind of like run with their tails behind their legs if you comment on how bad their art is. But of course, this is not kindergarten class. This is a presentation of the Holy Father. So yes, keep going.
I mean, it's so insipid. That presentation was absolutely insipid. That's the only word I can think of to use for it. It's, what are you trying to say to the Holy Father? You're not worth the time to actually put forth an effort to make something of quality, that you're just part of this simple and dressed down. This is stupid. That's a stupid thing to give to somebody. I wouldn't give that to an enemy. I wouldn't even spend the time. This is it. Anyway, look.
Who is he? Yeah.
Yeah. What is she trying to say to him by giving him something like that? That you are beneath us. You're not worth the effort. I want to take this a step further, though, because what she's talking about, if you listen to what she said, the things that you brought up, she was complaining about lack of funding. Funding for what exactly? What are we trying to finance here? What are we trying to get money to do? She doesn't really go into that. And if you look at the IOM website and you start looking through what they're doing, and we'll get into that in just a moment, it seems pretty clear that they're not really interested in the salvation of souls and the good of the people. They're looking at changing policies, specifically surrounding morality. So there's a very serious problem here. If you look at what the other things that she complains about, she says that, well, it's climate change that's causing all of these mass migrations. Really?
Red flag right there. Right.
Yeah. If you want to know that somebody's lying about something, listen to them generalize a topic, call it a problem, and look for policy decisions to be made on it without giving any specific examples whatsoever. That's exactly what she's doing. She's saying, well, it's climate change that's causing really. So if it's climate change, then you can cite specific sources that show how an entire area had its climate upended because of climate change, and it was a disaster that was caused specifically by climate change, not by, just normal natural disasters, that forced these people to move, which of course speaks to the larger issue. What is she trying to say? She's saying we need to open our borders to allow mass migration, and we need to implement policies that are going to curtail what we call climate change. So it's a two-ended sword that she's trying to use to push forward a much stronger agenda than just assisting people who are in need. That's the bottom line, what we're talking about. But when we start looking into who she is and what she's doing, I want to read to you something. I found an interview that she did in 2019. It was published on the chathamhouse.org website, which she was running at the time. And in this interview, she said, let me pull it up real quick. It's in my notes. It was very interesting because they asked specifically about certain aspects of women in politics, and her responses to two different questions went directly to abortion. So listen to this. One question. Numerous U.S. congresswomen wore white to U.S. President Donald Trump's recent State of the Union address in the name of women's rights and gender equality. How much are these issues still a challenge across the U.S.? This is what she said. They are still a challenge. Women in the U.S. are still fighting to protect the right to decide whether to terminate a pregnancy. Full stop. So right there, she's calling abortion a right. This is who she is, and this is her disposition when it comes to migration policy. She goes on. She said, that's remarkable if you think about it, that in 2019, there are still very real concerns that Congress may tell women what they can do with their own bodies. Again, she's doubling down on this abortion issue. And then she goes on. I'm not going to read the whole quote, but that's important to keep in mind. Then throughout this interview, she was asked this. Currently, there is quite a difference between the number of Democratic and Republican women who hold seats in Congress. Why is there such a contrast between the number of women serving in both parties, and will we see this change in the future? Her response? I think it comes down to three issues. The first issue is abortion rights, which is the key challenge that is critical for a lot of women. The Republican Party for the last 20 years has been very much defined by its anti-choice position. So I think it makes it difficult for a lot of women to join. So she was asked about women's rights or women in politics, and her response was to come quickly to abortion. So this is something that is foremost on this woman's mind. When she sits down with the Pope and wants to talk about immigration policy, what do you think is going to be foremost on her mind? Well, I went to the IOM website because I wanted to see what its policies were on abortion. And I found this. It's a, let's pull up.
This is a UN organization, basically. Okay.
Yes.
Not ties to the Catholic Church officially, nothing like that. Okay, keep going.
Yep. Let's pull up the PDF file, SRH HIV. Pull that up. Not that one. There we go. That one. So this is on the IOM website, IOM UN Migration. You see it down there in the lower left. They were working with Save the Children, which is a radical pro-abortion international aid and development agency. And right there at the top, the title is Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights and HIV Knows No Borders. And when you start reading through it, they're talking about reproductive health, reproductive rights, and they talk about a right to abortion. And even more to the point, they're talking about making sure that women have access to contraception. And not just women, they talk about migrant women, but they're talking about sex workers. So they're trying to perpetuate the sex trade on top of making sure women have access to abortifacients and contraceptives. So here is, and this, of course, was put out after she took over at the IOM, which shows, again, her contempt for women, her contempt for children, her contempt for morality. She has no place being in the Vatican, let alone having a private audience with the Pope. So there are other things I could go into about IOM and what its disposition is. It's I've got other documents that I found, like this one on gender and border management.
Did she call herself a Catholic? I'm just curious about that. Any faith?
I have no idea. I didn't see any indication that she would consider herself Catholic. But
Okay.
she really liked Pope Francis, so that should tell you just about anything you need to know about that. But here on this gender and border management, on the second paragraph, it said, states need to carefully factor such gendered differences into the development of border management policies. Such policies need to include an understanding of gender-related vulnerabilities, expected roles and power dynamics associated with being a man, woman, boy, girl, as well as non-binary individual,
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
and whether one identifies as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and or intersex, which might expose migrants to divergent types of risks. Applying gender-specific dimensions of migration and border activities will help to ensure appropriate and efficient cross-border movements and with due regard for migrants' rights. What is that document saying here? This document is saying that various governments need to change their positions, their stances, their policies, and their interactions with sexual deviancy. In other words, we need to be more welcoming and more embracing and more have a stronger and more welcoming approach to those who are engaging in sexually deviant acts, or even have a psychological problem and start to believe a fantasy and want to impose that fantasy on the rest of us through gender identity. Now, this is actually reinforced by the last thing I want to show you. This comes from IOM Migration, primarily in the Latin America and the Caribbean section. And it's a blog entry, but it's a blog entry from their office, which means it's an article written by their people. And the title is Promoting Inclusion, 8 Strategies for Protecting LGBTQI+ Migrants in the Caribbean. And we don't need to read any of it. I'm just going to go through some of the points that they talk about. Updating legislation on the rights of LGBTQI+ people. So they want to update legislation. They want to change your legislation through migration policy. Okay. All of this shows the disposition of the agency she represents, which is also represented by her own personal philosophy. So when she sits down and meets with the Pope and starts talking about how we need to have a more open border policy and start looking at welcoming the stranger and all the buzzwords and all the talking points that we've heard for the last 20 years, what she's saying is we're going to change what your country believes morally, and we're going to do it through migration policy.
Huge.
That's what she's really saying.
So it's change your country's morality through migration.
Yep.
Summation of that, right? Okay. I read some more too, just in terms of her bio. Excellent research there. I mean, that gives you a snapshot of kind of where Amy is, where she's coming from. She's been termed the UN's migration chief. She is a former Obama Biden insider, deputy Homeland Security advisor under President Barack Hussein Obama. She is the architect of the Countering Violent Extremism program that erased Islam and jihad from FBI training. She's the creator of Obama's Refugee Welcomes campaign, launched days after the Paris terror attacks, shame Americans in silence. Okay. She moved. Okay. This is who she is. Okay. And she works at the UN. Now let's just, I mean, if I'm Pope Leo and try to, I guess in his defense, he takes hold of the office, of Peter, is the biggest, largest religious institution in the entire world. Okay. The apparatus of the Vatican is enormous. Okay. He gets in and he has all these different systems in place. I doubt if he's the one, and maybe he is. I don't know. I'm just trying to leave it open for debate or hope, right? That I don't know if he's on social media saying, you know what, that woman over there from the UN, let's bring her in here. Let's meet with her. Let's set up that meeting and let's do an interview, right? I don't think that's how it works. I think at least initially, as he's still getting a hold of everything, that people are brought to him and he could be blindsided a little bit, kind of like the interview in some ways, although that was an EWTN reporter, the friend reporter asked that question. But so you got to give him that, I think, in some way, maybe. I don't know. But either way, I mean, is that fair to say that there's a little bit to that, a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I would actually take it a step further. And the way I would look at it is to say that instead of talking about Pope Francis, or I'm sorry, Pope Leo, the head of the Catholic Church, let's talk about Pope Leo the man. Because as a man, he has his own biases and dispositions and philosophies with regard to how things should be run in the world. And what we know about Pope Leo in his background is that he is kind of a soft left leaning individual. You know, he's pro-life. He's solidly pro-life. I know that for a fact. He's pro-family, profoundly pro-family, but he has those soft left leanings that want to be, helpful and do good things for people and think that society is designed to do good things for people, and probably was told over the years and generations that, the United Nations is a good thing and that we should be working towards that utopian society that the United Nations presents. I think he's bought into that. I don't think that means that he, as the Pope, is trying to tell the world that the United Nations is an authority with regard to international policy and morality. And when he sits down and talks to somebody like this, I think that he's looking at them as somebody who has all of the information and all of the insights and knows far more about this situation than I do. And so when they talk about migration and the plight of migration, the people that are mistreated, and that's so terrible, he thinks, okay, they've got the insight. They've been there. They've got the on the ground information. And he's not thinking, what's their agenda? What are they actually trying to do? And are they in line with the church's teaching and disposition on the integration of society and how morality and how policy play in the politeia, in the political sphere? I don't think he's thinking about it in those terms, which is why he's going to be constantly blindsided by individuals putting these people in front of him and the things that they're talking about. And he might even say, wow, I really like what you're doing, and keep doing it, not knowing or having any kind of background or insight into what they're actually about. So this is a serious problem.
That's important, because therefore this podcast, other podcasts, all the Catholic commentators out there, zillion, from Raymond Arroyo, Taylor Marshall, others, Catholic Register, all that. When we bring this, it should be a service. It should not be a attack on the person of the Holy Father. I mean, we got to pray for him first and foremost, but I think our job as Catholic is to pray for him, but to respectfully speak up. Maybe he doesn't know this. I don't know. Or bring it to his attention. I think he heard us loud and clear from when he did the interview with about Dick Durbin. I mean, loud and clear, because we all spoke up, and you saw it there when he had the opportunity for an interview again, he just backed with, and I'm staying out of it. Okay. But so I think, like the kind of research you just did by pulling up, this is Amy Pope and Holy Father. Like, you may not realize this, but when you meet with somebody in your Vatican News press conference corps, they give an interview to Amy Pope, and they give her the time of day and give her a platform. We, the Catholic people who are in America, are left confused, okay? At the very least. It's like when you met with Father James Martin, okay? You had that photo op. He went with his own story. We know what story he's going to go with, that Pope Leo's continuing the legacy of Pope Francis, which is blessing of same-sex unions, okay? But there's no comment from the Vatican. Like, it's, at a certain point, yes, I mean, Holy Father, you got to know this, okay? This causes scandal for the faithful.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's fair to say, and I think we got to be clear on that. And although I do think, to your point, Michael, about the soft leftist, that interview, okay, you maybe should have done it from 2 weeks ago, where he kind of revealed his cards of where he stood with regards to the seamless garment theory. Okay. If you're against abortion, but you're for the death penalty, you're not really pro-life. If you're for abortion, but you're against the inhumane treatment of migrants, you're not pro-life, says the Holy Father. I mean, that wasn't a misstep. I think that really showed where he stands on some of these issues, and we got to pray for him, right?
Sure.
Do you remember what you said right when he was elected? You used the case of Pius IX.
Yep.
Right? Say that part again about where Pius IX started and where he ended at the end of his pontificate.
Sure. Pius IX was a liberal. He was elected as a liberal. He was a suspected Freemason.
1840s, right? Roughly?
1840s, yeah. So the idea was that when Pope Pius IX came into power, the liberal establishment was ecstatic. They thought it was great that they were going to have such an enlightened individual on the throne of Peter. And it wasn't right away, but it was fairly... He made some realizations early on in his papacy, and when they started trying to ramrod certain policy ideas across his desk, and he very, introspectively examined them and recognized the errors inherent in them, he started compiling a list of various issues that were, prominent throughout the day, and examining them in the light of Catholic teaching. And he came up with, as a result of this, the the syllabus of errors. And he started explaining that there were certain ideologies that are condemned. They're inimical to Catholic teaching. They all fell in line with the ideals of liberalism. And it's because of this. There was a book that was written called Liberalism is a Sin, and it's based largely on the writings of Pope Pius IX. So I think that there's real hope, and we should be praying for the Holy Father. Why is it that Our Lady asks constantly for us to pray for the Holy Father?
Exactly.
It's because nothing's written in stone. And, you can look at where a man came from, but you might be able to look over the hill and say, well, the direction he's headed is going in this way, but that's not set. And you can still, through the institution of grace, pray for the individual to change their mind, to have their eyes opened by the Holy Spirit, who will then direct him in the direction that's proper to the Catholic Church, and leading the church into the direction that God intends for it, instead of following the ways of the world. So yeah, absolutely. That's why we have to pray for the Pope.
That is well said. Let's wrap up this whole immigration thing, which it's going to continue to be. It's a hot topic in the news, from the National Guard to ICE attacks to everything, right, from the Holy Father. It'll continue to be right there. It relates to comments that were made about immigration here in the United States and the melting pot. Now, it's important about who this came from, okay? There's a figure that came really, literally I never heard about this individual until almost the day Charlie Kirk was killed, assassinated, right? His name is Brylan Hollyhand, okay? He was literally on Fox News an hour after Charlie Kirk died. Brylan apparently has had a relationship. He's he's born in 2006, whatever age that makes him, 19, 20 years old. Is an American right-wing political activist, former co-chair of the Republican National Committee, Youth Advisory Council. He's a son of a major Republican donor. This individual has been touted as Charlie Kirk's successor by establishment media. Okay. And you see him all over campus now. He's got a major boost on his social media platforms. He is articulate. And again, don't know him personally. Not really sure his faith life. He seems like your evangelical Christian. Has had a relationship with Charlie of sorts. Okay, not officially tied to Turning Point, but has spoken at TPUSA events. Okay, around the country, does kind of the same pattern. And that says, God bless him, right? Going around speaking, good for you, right? I do think it's a little bit odd, suspicious that he we're still mourning the death of CK, trying to figure out the answers, and boom, this guy shoots up out of nowhere. So I'm always
it reeks of opportunity.
And also, we're smart enough to know now that the way algorithms work, the way donors work, the way media works, people are brought to the forefront a lot of times because they're meant to be brought to the forefront, right? By people behind them, right? It's just a fact, right? So, it's a lot of us are suspicious. I'm not saying I'm not making a judgment on the guy's character. I barely know him. But I'm just putting out the Brylan Hollyhand, and I wish him the best. If he's going to help America and bring people to God, and fantastic, right? However, he had some comments from an event with regards to immigration. I'm going to play that clip, and here's what he said at a college campus a few days ago.
And you are we're continuing supporting legal immigrants in the country. I said the melting pot, absolutely something that we should continue to do.
So we should keep increasing the amount of legal immigrants.
Legal immigrants, yes, we're a melting pot. I absolutely support that.
So I'm sure you understand these groups vote overwhelmingly against American values. They vote for the Democratic Party. So surely that's the death of the Republican Party, right?
Yes, but we can't close our borders and have our nation where we don't accept anybody to come in. So I've been a very big proponent against...
Plenty of countries do that.
We can't just completely close our borders off and never allow somebody else to migrate into the country.
Why not?
Because that's how the country started, as a melting pot. We welcome people in.
This country did not start as a melting pot. The term was invented in 1910 by Israel Zangwill.
So the people that came over from England didn't melt into America and
No,
allow
they
them
started
to
in America. They didn't melt into anything.
Okay. I've been very clear that I'm against illegal immigration coming into this country and plaguing our generation from not getting jobs, making our streets unsecure, and actually harming Americans' future. Because therefore, there's no safe America and free America to grow up in.
Again, my question wasn't about illegal immigration, it was about legal immigration.
And I think we should support more people coming legally and not illegally.
Okay, I think we all understand what your position is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
All right, comments on that specifically
Well,
with his melting pot and all that stuff.
Yeah. To start with, one of the reasons Charlie was so effective when going into any kind of debate or interview or just a cold environment and trying to engage people, he knew what he was talking about from the get-go. He knew all of his terms. He knew the history of the use of the terms. He could articulate just about anything that he said all the way down to 10 layers beneath the depth of what he said on the surface. This gentleman is not Charlie Kirk. And he did not have the depth to go into to explain his position. He simply kept reiterating, well, I'm for legal immigration and the melting pot. That's what he kept falling to. The melting pot idea is a bad idea. And the gentleman who was asking him a question was right to say that the term was invented in 1909. The idea was that we wanted to have a multicultural society where all the different metals of all the different ideas and all the different places that people come from can all get together in this one great big molten pile of metal. And it's great. And it's going to be great. And it's always only ever going to be great because it's all mixed together and nothing ever matters. There is an inherent danger in this idea of multiculturalism. Did you know that being a member of the Communist Party is what do you call it? It's a barring faction from allowing a legal immigrant coming into this country. If you're a member of a communist party, you were not allowed in. This came about in the early 1900s. And it was a policy that's been in place for a long time. I'm not sure that it's still in place. I think maybe Trump reinstated it. But going all the way back to the 1940s, if you were a member of a communist party, you were not allowed to immigrate into the United States. There's a reason for that, because people who have false ideologies and political views that are inimical to what the United States stands for, then you don't belong here and you shouldn't be here, because we don't want the infection of bad philosophy, of bad politics and bad ideologies to come into this country. This is why Donald Trump is so firm on making sure that members of gangs and members of cartels and people with criminal backgrounds are not allowed in. So when we go back to the melting pot, if it was used as a blanket excuse to allow people with Muslim backgrounds, communist backgrounds, etc., to come in and be a part of civilized society within the United States. That's a problem. Now, when it comes to the question of legal migration versus illegal migration, I tend to side more with the idea that, yeah, we should allow legalized migration where it is regulated.
We already do. We're as a country, we let in more than any but other nation.
Yeah. I think the person that was asking the question was basically saying we should just close the borders and walk away from the world, which it's unjust, and it would also cut off all the Catholics from the rest of the Catholics throughout the world. I'm opposed to that. I think that would be an injustice. But there has to be regulation. There has to be kind of a slow drip, and in fact, it should not be easy for somebody to become a citizen. It has to be something they have to work towards, something they have to wait for, and something they have to truly desire. Because if you make it too easy and you allow anybody to come in, well, then what's the buy-in? What do they have to offer society other than to come in and then set themselves up in a ghetto somewhere? That's not a good idea either. So there's a lot of, policy and prudential judgment when it comes to how to handle that situation. But it starts with saying we need to have legal regulated migration. and then we can talk about what those regulations are and how to work it. But, I'm just tired of the blanket statements, oh, well, the system's broken. Broken how? What's broken about it? What don't you like? What needs to be fixed? Let's talk about the particular issues. If you go into a car mechanic's shop and you say, my car's broken, he's going to say, well, what's wrong with it? It's just broken. It's not working. Yeah, but does it start? Does the engine make noise? What's the problem?
Right.
Start talking about the specifics. The generalities are where the problem is. And I think that even in debate, political debate, anytime anybody talks about migration, I think the Republican candidate needs to say, okay, you say it's broken. Where? How? Let's talk about the specifics. They won't have any answers because they're so used to being allowed to talk about it in general terms.
That's the case. I think what we all have to be talking about more is kind of along the lines of who are we letting in, and they have to be in line with the local communities. That's a Catholic principle too, as well, right? Like Colonel Ratzinger understood so well that a local country or a country that was overwhelmed with citizens who completely thought a different way, didn't share the same Christian faith, would overwhelm the system. And I think that counters a little bit the melting pot, right? That Bryland is spouting out there to some degree. And that term, as you said, that came from a play by Israel Zangwill, first staged in 1908, depicts the life of a Russian Jewish immigrant family, the Kikanos in the United States. David had survived a Holocaust which killed his mother and sister, and he wishes to forget this horrible event. So he comes up basically with a melting pot as a term to erase all like ethnic boundaries, right? And to be absorbed into just the mass, which again, that's not the way it should be, right? So that is the terminology from where melting pot originates. And I think people have been speaking on more about it, like people like Matt Walsh. Okay. I follow him frequently on his X posts, that we're a Christian nation. And if we continue to let in people who are going to overwhelm the system, like Dearborn, Michigan, or like Mamdani in New York City, you won't have a country. Okay. I would hope that, think about what has happened in Europe. Charlie was so huge into that. Europe is near disaster, right? They just imprisoned a Catholic priest in Spain last week for his comments about radical Islam. He's now in prison, okay? And it's been overrun, and churches are being burned down, okay? Where were our Catholic, not just bishops or priests, but where were our Catholic leaders, lay faithful as well, speaking up and stopping this? Because that is what is going to happen with this kind of just let in everybody and anybody, and that's it. And if you resist, you are not welcoming the migrant, and that's shoved down on us. There's the priest, Spanish priest Father Custodio Ballester, faces jail for criticizing Islam, found an article he published back in 2016.
Good heavens.
That's 9 years ago. Watch what you post, okay? So, anyways, I think we leave it there. Unless you got final comments on the immigration thing, but it's important. Let's keep following that. Shifting gears over to what's Trump's doing a lot of good stuff, but his FDA, man, bad news. Trump administration is under fire from pro-life advocates. Good. After the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, quietly approved a new generic version of the abortion drug mifepristone last Tuesday, September 30th. The drug's manufactured by Avita Solutions, a company that openly declares its mission to normalize abortion and make it accessible to all. Okay. I actually looked up their Avita Solutions. I looked it up, and you have to wonder when in your about section of your website, when you're talking about these pills that you offer, like half the website is about the side effects of the pill. Okay. Which is like, okay, if it's so good, why is half the website or half the page about it, about how horrible a pill it is? Well, this is the pill. Health Secretary Robert Kennedy indicated in a statement on the evening of October 2nd that he stands by his past criticism of Biden's administration for nixing mifepristone's in-person dispensing rule, without studying the safety risk. We are filling that gap, Kennedy wrote. Last month, I joined the FDA commissioner in writing to state attorney generals, pledging to review all the evidence, including real-world outcomes on the safety of this drug. That's good. Research already point to serious risk when mifepristone is used without proper medical oversight. Okay, for non-medical people, this is basically what, for layman's language, if you're going to have a chemical abortion, okay, it's done with a double hit, okay? You have mifepristone, which kills the progesterone production in the woman, which basically ultimately starves the baby, okay?
Yep.
So first, you starve the baby in the womb through mifepristone, and then how do you get that dead cadaver, otherwise known as your daughter or your son, out of your body? You take misoprostol, okay? Double whammy, chemical abortion, starve your baby, and then expel the baby. And many times, as the website of Levita Solutions also says, in the side effects, the misoprostol won't actually get your entire cadaver out of your system. So you have to have a
DNC.
Yeah, exactly, to remove it. Just I'm saying that kind of in that kind of just tone of voice, just to kind of remind people the absurdity of this. Okay, we did some media hits over the weekend on Secular Newsmax, and just talking to a lot of the audience, not Catholic, not religious, but just even in terms of, I said it from the point of view, like, look, even if you don't believe that what's inside the mother's womb is a clump of cells, okay, let's just pretend that for a moment, okay? Even on that fact alone, how can you possibly prescribe these or allow these pills to be consumed by the women with the amount of statistics out there, or the women who have adverse reactions to these? Okay. Right. Let alone what it does to our water system. Now, I'm all for President Trump and Robert Kennedy doing a press conference talking about the dangers of Tylenol, right? Yeah. That's great for pregnant women, as he did. Okay, wonderful. But if we're going to talk about that, can we talk about this? Comments, Michael.
So my understanding, and now I'm open to correction if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the situation is that the approval of the mifepristone generic use, in other words, creating the generic brand of the same drug, is not an endorsement or a permission of use for mifepristone as an abortifacient itself, but is intended to simply verify that, yes, this particular drug it has the same efficacy, or the same efficacy. I mean, I am speaking of this in very cold medical terms, but it has the same action as the name brand drug itself. And so the approval of generic use is not a judgment on the rightness or wrongness or the permission to use mifepristone as an abortifacient. It's simply an acknowledgement that this drug does exactly what its name brand counterpart does. That's the approval process, to my understanding, to my knowledge, from the FDA. Now, could the FDA have said that there are serious health risks associated with this drug? Perhaps, but in order to do that, it would also have to implicate the already approved use of the name brand mifepristone, which may involve another process. So again, we're talking about something that's a bureaucratic process, and we're applying a moral application to it. I don't know that it's the same. It might be, but I would want more information on what exactly happened and why it happened this way and what it means. Obviously, it does mean more abortion. It means more access to killing babies on a grand scale. But I'd like to know a little bit more about the process and what legally could or should have been done with regard to this particular drug.
Fair enough. I mean, there's also legal implications, speaking of legalities. Because if you have pro-life laws in a particular state, a woman can just get those pills and get it mailed to her and commits the abortion in the state. So while, life might be protected in just say Kansas or whatever, there's ways around that, right? So I think we need to be speaking up way more about this from the pulpit, from our Conference of Catholic Bishops, to Catholic legislators, to scientists about the dangers of this, because this is real and has if we're so big into the war on drugs, fentanyl, let's just do it in the seamless garment, like all these issues applied. I'm joking, right? But they all going to be talked about, right? They all have great moral weight to them. Okay, let's move on. Do you see the article about, this is right your neck of the woods, Michael? You have a man with 200 explosives and leftist manifesto arrested outside Supreme Court at a church. Okay, Washington D.C. on Sunday, a couple days ago, arrested a man with hundreds of explosive devices outside a church holding a mass honoring the Supreme Court. The man had a manifesto that suggested he was targeting the Supreme Court and Catholics, according to the Daily Wire. Louis Jerry, a 41-year-old from Arizona and New Jersey, was apprehended outside the cathedral October 5th. Actually, that's right when Father Heilman, our friend, was doing that rosary coast to coast there in D.C. It was out during the Red Mass, which is a mass which is to pray for the judges as they embark on the new term. And he was planted there. He had explosives picked up by the police. Okay, thoughts on that just in general? That we have one more. Yeah, go ahead.
Obviously, this is just another in a long string of acts of political violence being perpetrated from the left. What we're seeing here is the rhetoric coming from Democrats, aiding and abetting, pushing for violence to be perpetrated upon what is perceived to be their political opponents and their political enemies. They're marking them as enemies. And we can expect more of the same as long as the left is allowed to use the rhetoric that they've been using. And I'm glad that they were able to catch this in time and to prevent a travesty from taking place. But how did it get to the point where that was a possibility to begin with? And when we start looking at what the leftists have been saying, what the Democrats have been saying, it's not shocking that this kind of thing is going to go on.
It's not. And, I think there's got to be equal measure. Okay. We're unfairly in target. Christianity is targeted more than any other religion in the entire world. Okay. We've had 528 churches in America, Catholic churches, which have been vandalized, targeted, whatever, in some capacity since 2020 per Catholic vote. Okay. We actually posted that and across all of our social media, like 2 weeks ago, almost 1 million views on that. Okay. So people are hardly aware of that. But it needs to be continuously brought front and center that we are under attack in this country, whether our physical churches, whether it's our school children in Minnesota, whether it's Washington, D.C. People in America hate the fact that we are a Christian nation because they know the strength of that, and they are on the war path to destroy that. Okay? We'll continue to follow that. At the end of the show here, we're wrapping up. Let's just kind of circle back and end with just kind of some general updates about where the Charlie Kirk assassination is, the investigation. Because, again, that's obviously I have a personal interest in here as a friend of his. Our organization, Catholic for Catholics, did work with Turning Point during the 2024 election and other stuff. So I know a lot of their people in the organization. They're good people. This death has shook, obviously, the local Arizona Catholic community, and also America and the world. Okay, it's a big deal. This is the most high-profile assassination since JFK or RFK or Martin Luther King, right? It's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to continue to get to the bottom of this. I personally believe the story does not add up yet from the FBI. There's a lot of inconsistencies there. We can debate that ad nauseum. But I think this point was important that was just revealed from, Candace Owens about 2 days ago. Candace Owens claimed Charlie Kirk, this is from site I'm reading here, claimed Charlie Kirk predicted his own death, telling 3 people a day before he died, "I think they're going to kill me." Candace sparked a lot of buzz over her claims surrounding the death of Charlie Kirk Owens, a former employee of Kirk's organization. claims that contrary to the FBI saying Kirk was shot by 22-year-old Tyler Robbins, that there's a bigger story behind the scenes. Shortly after his death, Owens claimed that Kirk was under pressure from Israeli donors and had a meeting with donors where Bill Ackman was also present. So everyone was laughing at her, saying, okay, that's ridiculous. Show us the receipts. Well, she showed the receipts. Okay. 2 days ago, she literally showed, and you can probably get that on the screen too, the receipts from Charlie himself saying, I am done with Israel. I'm done being bullied. He was challenged on that group of 6 people to disinvite Tucker Carlson from speaking at America Fest, okay, because of his anti-dispensationalist views on the state of Israel, okay. Charlie followed up that text thread, which we'll get up in the screen in a second, and he said, you know what, there it is. I'm going to get it so I can read that myself there. Okay, from Charlie, just lost another huge Jewish donor. This is 48 hours before Charlie was killed. $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Someone responds, this is on a group of 6 people. Charlie responds, Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. And someone responds, please don't invite Candace. That might feel good short term, but it's not good long term. In my opinion, like all groups, you're going to get a wide variety of opinions. That nasty free will thing that God bestowed on us makes life frustrating at times. Okay, you can say whatever you want about other people with the conspiracy theorists. Again, I've lost track. I don't have time for that about who shot where bullet. I mean, I wanted to be answered. It's too much for me. I'm overloaded there. But however, I do think that this is substantial enough. I think that the respect people need to figure that out. So people with Candace or whoever or the FBI can figure that out. Good for them. We want the truth. That being said, to criticize those who are trying to get to the bottom of the truth, I think that's unfair. And I think that's weird. Okay. Because they are bringing to light stuff that we would never have seen. This in particular to show that, yeah, he really was under pressure. He really had decided, I'm leaving the pro-Israel cause. And then to hear from this article that we found out yesterday that she is in contact with 3 people that personally have said that Charlie predicted his own death 24 hours before he was killed from 3 different sources. Okay, that's interesting. And Charlie used the plural, they. They were going to kill him. Okay, that's just a fact. So thoughts on that, Michael?
Well, first of all, I'd like to know what the context was in which he said that. It's you can say,
I agreed.
You can say it like this. I think they're going to kill me, which is, I know I have a fear, an actual fear of this. Or you can say, I think they're going to kill me. Context matters. And I don't know what he was responding to. I don't know what he was alluding to. I don't know the they that he's talking about. I don't know that he meant kill as in actually take him out physically, or if he meant kill in the sense of more of a colloquial, they're going to be upset with me. There's a huge difference in what is meant by those particular words given by the context. We don't have the context. All we have are those words. So that's one.
Here's what we do. We also do have, though, you have a little bit of context. Okay, let's assume that there's 3 people at least 3 that Charlie said that to. Okay, it wasn't just one group of. I agree. You could say my wife's going to kill me if I don't get home on time. Okay, right. You can say it like that. But if you say it to 3 different people, okay, that's something. Also, what did he do the night before he died? His wife and him were so worried about his safety. This is from Erica Kirk herself, who did the interview with the New York Times. They were so worried about Charlie's safety from the curses that were put on him online, the hexes from the witches, that they called their parish priest over and they prayed over Charlie. And they specifically were asking both Erica and Father that Charlie wear a bulletproof vest. Okay. That's from Erica herself's interview in the New York Times, published the day before Charlie died. So you have those comments from 3 different people. You also have Erica telling, yes, they were worried about his safety.
Were there active death threats? Do we know of any?
I mean, I'm 99.9% sure, just from hearing what Charlie has said in TPUSA itself, just in the last 10 years. I mean, they live with death threats all the time, right? TPUSA had, Tyler said that, right? The amount of security at TPUSA headquarters always has been very tight. Okay. So death threats were just a common thing, right? But something in Erica's mind made her think, okay, this is big. I need to call a parish priest over for dinner. And also, you're going to wear the same Michael medal. Okay.
Yeah.
He was wearing that same Michael medal when he was shot. Erica now wears it and has blood on that medal, per the New York Times in her interview. Okay. So I do think that things were heating up. And when you add context to all of this, I think it's not just hearsay or stuff that's out there. You know, I think there's more to the story.
Sure. So then, of course, you've got the question of who the they is. Obviously, Candace Owens would say that the they is the Jewish interest groups. I don't know that we have that context. I mean, we have the context of the texts that she showed where there were Jewish donors and he said that I'm done with Israel. And, you know, that's fine. Correlation is not causation. So we can't say that he was talking about them as the ones that he thought were going to kill him. So, you know, again, it's if you want to follow the thread and use it as a lead and say, okay, let's see where it goes. All power to you. I'm not saying that that's not the case. All I'm saying is that the evidence as it stands needs to be substantiated and it needs to be given context. And then you can go and say, okay, maybe we can make a case for X, Y, or Z. So with this particular situation, I'd say that there's enough there to follow a lead and to follow the evidence and see where it goes. But there's certainly nothing conclusive at this point.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone really has made that ultimate conclusion. Hinted, but I thought someone, this is from a Turning Point major donor that published a statement yesterday, and I want to read it, just part of it really quick, because they're looking at the situation. They're looking at the attitude of even people around Charlie who were working with him, and some of the silence, or the not just passive silence in terms of asking questions, but the attack of those who are asking questions. And a major Turning Point donor came out of onto the public stage. The name's there. I don't offhand. I think it's John. I want to say it's from John and Arena Mappin. Okay. And this is what they said. They titled their article, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, and the Pursuit of Truth. It is our view that Candace Owens' actions are not just the actions that any real friend would take for their friend. They are the actions of the highest order of patriotism. Candace's actions are service to the whole country and to the world. Beyond that, they are truly providential, divinely inspired, metaphysical. There is a relationship between truth and all living things. There is a relationship between truth and God. Right now, Turning Point USA is at a vital moment. If we continue to witness the mistreatment and suppression of a young woman and mother of 4 young children who is doing everything she can to help get to the truth about who decided that her friend and fellow freedom fighter Charlie had to die, they will lose the country and the world. And America will have lost one of its greatest living patriots, only to see those factors against which he fought, free speech, and died for, win. Anyway, thoughts on that? We'll wrap this show up, Michael.
Well, I mean, I haven't read the article, so I don't have any thoughts on the rest of it. But look, if I had a friend that was killed in such a high profile manner, you can guarantee that I would be digging under every rock I could find to gather up as much evidence as I could to come to the truth. And I agree that pursuit is certainly the highest form of patriotism, but it's also just the highest. It is the pursuit of humanity. We should be pursuing the truth regardless of circumstance and regardless of the nature of things. We should all be looking for the truth. So I only applaud those who are looking for truth. I just urge caution on making any kind of declarations or prognostications before you have conclusive evidence. And that's where I kind of say, hey, take a step back before you actually say something.
Balanced approach. This is the problem too, when you've had government officials who've lied for decades to the American people.
Sure.
From 1963, JFK, from 1968, RFK, from Martin Luther King, also 1968, from COVID, to the lies there, to the untruths of the Butler investigation. We don't know much about that with Trump and the Palm Beach. Okay. It's like, you're going to get that. You're going to get people asking it. Like, they don't trust the system. And that is so important for democracy to actually work. You've got to be able to trust the system. That trust has not been earned. And I think that needs to be addressed, right? So closing comments, Michael, as we hit this next week coming up.
I don't really have any other closing comments. Just, keep your head above water.
Head above water. Watch this. Let's pray for the Pope. There's an information war going on right now. And that's what I think we'll hit next week about just people have got to understand who controls what you read, what you hear, what you're listening to, because it's the truth will set you free. And there's a massive war going on right now for that, whether it's, pagans or Marxist media or even people of goodwill, right? Or you have this came out 3 days ago. Did you see this, Michael? That Israel basically decided to geofence. They made a deal with Turning Point. And they spent $4.1 million to bolster support among Christians in the Western United States. And what they did is that they geofenced every single person who was at the funeral of Charlie Kirk in their bid to basically win them back over to support their agenda, both in the United States and what they're doing in the Middle East. Okay. So I never like being spied on. It's from whoever. Okay. And that has not gone over well with many of us. And I think we need to talk about that, what the implications are. So we'll hit that next week. So this has been an edition of Catholic Champion. Let's end with just to follow what Our Lady's asked for, to pray for our Holy Father, to pray for President Trump. Tomorrow's the feast of Our Lady of Champion. This is what the show is named after. That's the only proved apparition in the United States. It's where Our Lady asked us to evangelize, teach the children the faith. That's what it means. From our little kids to the children outside of our faith here in America, teach the children the faith. Tomorrow, Our Lady of Champion. That's her message. Let's end with an Ave Maria for the Pope and for our elected leaders. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Jesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Domini Patris, Filii, Spiritus Sancti. Amen. God bless you all. Fight on. See you next week.